Leanne Tran, psychologist who's worked with families whose kids don't fit the mould for almost 20 years. I've worked with children for decades, but I know parents are the real change makers when it comes to their kids. Having 3 kids of my own means I know it's not easy. Parent Like a Psychologist is all about simplifying how you support your kids with psychology information filtered through years of experience to take you from overwhelmed to confident. Come on in. Hello, welcome to another episode of Parent Like a Psychologist. Thank you so much for joining me. I am coming to you from my office today, so it feels a little bit out of place doing this recording in the room I usually see kids in rather than my home office. But it's a good place to come to eliminate all the distractions of trying to work from home. So that's what's got me there today. It's a Monday. I don't know if any of you struggle with, getting started really quickly on a Monday, but I certainly do. I wanted to talk about regulation today, co-regulation, and this flows on from the episode last week in which I was talking about that 3-step method from the parenting handbook book that I was reading. It talks about how to make sure your child is safe, make sure they know they're loved, and make sure that then you can work on solving the problem together. So go back and have a listen to that if you haven't yet, because that's a really great, simple approach, I think, to know what to do when your kids aren't, they're kind of having a struggle, a meltdown or a tantrum, anything like that. But I did want to talk today about one of the steps in more detail, and that's co-regulation, because I think it's something that we talk about a lot as psychologists, and it's hard to know from a parent point of view if you're doing that correctly unless the psychologists break it down for you. So that's what I want to do today. But I also want to talk about how you can tailor these ideas for your kids with ADHD or autistic kids, because it's really the tailoring of the solutions that's going to make them work for your home and your life. So I'll give some suggestions, but I think that's it's really important to highlight the fact that you can have lots of knowledge and information, but it's really about how well you can tailor it to your own children and being able to implement it in a way that feels natural for your family. That's the key, because I think that's the bit that's really hard from reading parenting books. So I'm going to focus on that a little bit today. But the episode's called 5 Steps to Co-Regulation, and that's what I'm going to talk through. The steps are to keep your emotions in check, number 1. Secondly, to try to let your kid know that they're safe. Number 3 is to name the emotion. 4 is to keep close to your child. And then 5 is to ride the wave as well. I'm going to go into those in more detail, but those are the 5 steps you can remember. When I was writing the name of this recording as I was starting it, I accidentally wrote 55, pressing it twice. And I thought, wow, that would be way too many steps, wouldn't it? So the fewer steps you need to remember, the easier it makes it to do. So number 1 is keep your emotions in check. And this is the one I think that is I was going to say that is the hardest, or that gets the most critique from people saying that that's not realistic. But and that's still true, I think. But all of these steps kind of I guess I get the feedback as a psychologist that these are hard steps to implement, and I do get that. I think sometimes people misunderstand that the idea of keeping your emotions in check is that you need to do it all the time. And that's not true. None of us can do that. We're all human. We can't. Your kids can't keep their emotions in check all the time, and you can't as a parent. But what it essentially means, and I'm getting this a lot too from the parenting handbook, which I talked about in the last episode. I've actually got an interview coming up with Tammy Shamoon, who is the author of the book, which will be really exciting to air and talk with her about all of these strategies. But one thing that she quotes in the book is, when little people are overwhelmed by big emotions, it's our job to share our calm, not to join their chaos. And that lines up with a common phrase where I work here, which is, you can only regulate your child's emotions down to the level of calm that you have in that moment. Because if you are upset and dysregulated, you won't be able to provide this space for kids. So I should imagine, emotional regulation is all about managing and changing and keeping, well, not keeping emotions, but bringing them back down to a smaller size when we're upset. So that's a job for us to do as parents. And then co-regulation means that we recognize our children don't have those skills yet. And so we do it with them. So co means together. So by us remaining calm, we have the space to then help our children calm themselves. If you are not calm, that's probably a different story, and you'll need to, you can try and get yourself calm first. If you can do that, great. You can move on with the next steps. If you can't, it might be a time of trying to tap out if there's another adult around who can assist and come and take your place with helping your child regulate. Or you may just need to take a minute. So often when my kids were crying as babies, it's okay to take a minute to walk away, get yourself in check, and then come back and help them with it. I think the primary thing to keep in mind is, once your kids get bigger, are they safe? So you don't go particularly far. And even just, 3 to 5 big, deep breaths where you're trying to block out their noise and help calm your own emotions is a great step to take. So we've got to keep our own emotions in check as the first step. The second step is to let your children know that they're safe. And so there is a lot of research about body language and how that communicates safety or threat to other people. So what you need to be aware of is whether your body language is communicating threat to your child or safety. If you're communicating threat, then your child's probably not going to calm and they're going to stay in that fight or flight situation. But if you can let them know that they're safe, they'll feel like they are safe enough to have those emotions calm. And so how you can do that is by getting down low. I do that all the time in therapy sessions. I will go and sit on the smaller step smaller chair, so that I'm shorter and down lower than the child I'm talking to if they are feeling really angry and upset. So you could do that by sitting down next to your child or on a shorter chair. You could sit, crouch or kneel down, sit on the floor. And the other thing to think about is your arms. If you are using closed body language, that's where your arms are kind of crossed, then that signals a threat. So if you can keep your arms open, that's a lot better. And some of the other things to avoid doing with your hands is things like pointing or, maybe waving your hands in the air, which can inadvertently communicate threat to your kids. So you've already regulated your own emotions. You're getting down into this position that lets them know they're safe. And then the next step is to name their emotions. Actually, I want to take a step back before we go into that, because I did want to point out about how in those signaling safety and that you're not a threat, that's the bit where you can tailor it for your child. So if you have an autistic child, probably at that point you want to be using way less language, because anything that's confusing can be a threat as well. So using less language, maybe using a tone of voice is perceived as calm by your kids, especially ADHD kids, and may, feed off the energy if you're using a loud voice, or autistic kids too, that may misinterpret your tone of voice. Be mindful of that and use a voice that they will interpret as a safe tone. But then when we go on to moving on to the next step, naming the emotion, this is where you can't really make mistakes because you are just reflecting back what you see your kid feeling. And if you get it wrong, they will correct you. And it's not bad to get it wrong because maybe they don't know, maybe you don't know the feeling. So you're kind of, by guessing, it's almost like a yes or no thing where they can say, yes, I am feeling mad, or no, that's not it. And they'll tell you something else instead. So what this sounds like is saying something like, you're really angry. I can see you're angry, or I can see you're so sad. You're really disappointed. You just name it for your kids because that validation of having somebody see their feelings is really powerful. How I would adapt this for, well, probably all neurodivergent kids, I use it in the same way, but I think you can use this for all kids, is then talking about the size of the emotion as well. And I use a scale a lot working with kids. So we might go from 0, 1, 2, or 3. So 1 is feeling a little angry, 2 is angry, 3 is very angry. So you could say, use a number system to kids, like, wow, you look like 10 out of 10 angry. So they feel like you really understand how they feel. You could also use your hands as a visual way to communicate the information, because, numbers is a little bit abstract. So I would often say to kids, if you're watching the video, you can see this. If you're not, you just have to imagine with me. But holding my hands close together, I might say, you're not a little bit angry. And then I move them out. I'd say, you're really angry. So that kids get a sense that you understand the depth of their feelings as well. And then the next step to use is proximity. And this is because we have a better impact interpersonally with people that we're close to, so physically close to. There's no point trying to do this from one room away. It's great to go and sit next to your child and be close to them. Some kids might appreciate a hug if they're really sad and upset. Usually when people are angry, they don't want to cuddle. But sitting next to them is enough. Sometimes maybe, it's just like a shoulders touching or knees touching if you're sitting together, or putting a hand on their shoulder or on their knee. If this isn't something your child likes, this is the point where you would tailor it. So if your kid doesn't like physical touch, that's okay. Just sit next to them. Sometimes even moving a hand closer to them is a way of signaling proximity, but without actually touching them and doing something that they don't like. And the proximity is all just about letting your child know that they're safe and loved and still held in that kind of boundary with you. So letting them know that when I say boundary, I mean letting them know that you're in charge of that situation. So even though they can't handle their feelings, they're getting the sense that you can handle them, and that, it signals safety to them. And that will help those feelings reduce in their size and severity. So the next phrase, the step, is ride the wave. And that's a phrase that reminds me of my good friend from university, where we'd always talk about, like, when things are stressful and difficult, you just got to ride that wave and get through it until you reach the shore, basically. And that's the similar kind of concept that we're talking about here. So it's about not leaving your child on their own and just sticking with them until the storm calms. If they if your child keeps saying to you to go away, um, I would move back, but still stay close to them. And so that's because kids really do need our help in these moments to co-regulate. So even though they're telling us, go away, I don't want you here, they can't do it on their own. So taking a step back signals to them you're trying to respect them, but you're still there to help them with it. You may also then just want to move away as they calm. You could move further and further away, but staying in the same room or nearby. And then at the end, I let kids know, like, we don't have to talk this through now, but I'm here and I'm ready to talk when you are. Often kids take a lot longer to calm down than we realize. So that realistically, they might not be at a point of being able to talk through that situation with you until the next day. And I'd say there's no real harm in waiting to talk it through. But if you do try to talk before your kids are ready, that can mean that it'll re-escalate the situation. So I think it's better off to see those conversations as really separate. There's one in which you're co-regulating emotions and helping with that, and the other one where you are going to talk about, hey, why did that happen? What was it that didn't go well for you, and how can we problem solve that as a completely separate discussion and situation. So hopefully these tips will help you the next time you're in this place where your child's really having a hard time. I think I try to talk about it in a positive way, like having a hard time. As parents, you might be saying that they're losing it, they're melting down, having a tantrum. All of those kind of words fit this situation and this model that I'm talking about. But I use different words because often kids don't like to hear that. They like to be validated in that they, really are having a hard time, which is what's happening. So the first one is to keep your emotions in check, then try to show safety, not show threat. Third step is name the emotion. The fourth is to stick close to your child, so keep proximity to them. And then the fifth one is ride that wave. Once you've done those steps, there's not much you need to do except stick there with them until their emotion passes or gets small enough that they can move on. Hopefully also you've learned a few ways to think about tailoring the strategies to the situation and also to your child's needs. And yeah, I think that tailoring it is a really important part. And if that's something that you're struggling with, I would recommend that you join me in the molded parenting course I have, which will be happening in September. The name is going to change because I think molded parenting is too confusing, but really what it is, skills and strategies for parents who have children who've been newly diagnosed with some kind of difference, or if you're well into the journey but still need some help with tailoring the solutions to your child. That's the place you can get it, because there'll be lots of information, but we'll also meet weekly to tailor what you've learned to your specific child and situation, because that really is the bit that I think gives you the confidence as a parent to know that you've got it right and feel, confident in the strategies you're putting in place. So you can join the waitlist now for that. It's going to be the end of the waitlist soon, because my idea is to have this as a rolling thing parents can join, so that you skip the waitlist, because waitlists are often the hardest thing about, needing help and having to wait for it. It would be ideal if you could access the help whenever you need it and are ready. So that's going to be, that's what I'm going to do for parents, because as a parent myself, I'm thinking about what I need when I'm factoring in how to design these intervention programs for families. So hopefully this has given you a really nice little 5 steps they can fit on your hand, 5 fingers, to keep in mind for when your child's next losing the plot, so that you can help them with those emotions by co-regulating, which means doing it with them. And look forward to chatting with you again next episode, where I'll go through some more gold from this book, building up to the interview with Tammy. So thanks so much for joining me. Thanks for listening to this episode of Parent Like a Psychologist. If you found it helpful, please share on Instagram so other parents can benefit too, and tag me at Leanne Psychology so that I can say a big thank you. Head over to leannetran.com.au to join the village for bite-sized psychology tips straight to your inbox. I really hope this podcast has brought a new perspective and you a step closer towards a calm parent and a thriving child. Have a delightful day.